friend of the Chinese people and for all those that are fighting for democracy and rule of law in China. He is a senior member on the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House, is a ranking member of the Congressional Executive Commission on China. Chris Smith, everybody.
Thank you.
You would stand a little bit behind the speaker.
Thank you so very much. And this is an extremely important gathering, and I'm so glad so many people are here. I'm standing with so many heroes who have stood up for human rights and democracy in China. So I want to thank them for their leadership. Chen Guangzhen, who's an incredible hero who has suffered so much. And so thank you, and his wife, who have been just a great voice of reason, and unfortunately not reciprocated by the people behind us in the embassy. You know, we are raising, and Bob Fu, he can't be with us today because he is ill, but you know, Bob Fu has led the effort on religious freedom for decades. Obviously, he was incarcerated after Tiananmen Square, and Bob is, you know, I've gone to China, now I'm barred from going to China now, they won't give me a visa, but Bob Fu has spoken out for all faiths, but including the Christians who have been repressed, and increasingly, whether it be the underground church or even the patriotic church or Three Self movement, all of the Christians are under the boot of Xi Jinping, who is trying to crush all faith, especially now with the genocide as we're seeing with the Uyghurs. You know, we are raising our voices in protest and prayer today outside the embassy of the People's Republic of China. There is an irony in all of this, as we are representing, those who are here, we're representing the people, speaking for those in China who are voiceless. We are standing with the oppressed and not with the oppressor, which is represented by the people who are working in that building. Of course, the oppressor in chief is Xi Jinping, who has unfortunately unleashed tyranny as we have not seen since Mao Zedong on his own people. Today we will hear the voices of the voiceless, the voices on behalf of Guo Feixiong, a courageous lawyer who has been imprisoned by the Chinese communists and who was detained, was denied a humanitarian request to allow him to visit his wife, Jiang Jing, to bid her farewell as she was dying of cancer. There was not even a scintilla of humanitarianism in the government to allow that visit. Voices are also raised on behalf of victims like Mirago Turson, who had a 2018 congressional hearing that I co-chaired with Marco Rubio. We were both chairman of the China Commission. She recounted her ordeal of torture, sexual abuse, and detention in one of China's mass internment camps in Xinjiang. She broke down weeping, telling us that she pleaded with God to end her life. Her Chinese jailers restrained her to a table, increased the electrical currents that were coursing through her body, and mocked her belief. When she asked the torturer, "Why are you doing this?" he said, "Because you're a Uyghur." Just because of that, this man was torturing this woman. Today, our voices are also raised in defense of those who are seeking freedom in Hong Kong. You know, as many of you know, I was the prime sponsor of the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, introduced it in 2014. Finally, it got passed. Marco Rubio's also got passed. It is signed into law. But frankly, it was too late. Xi Jinping was already getting rid of the basic law and the UK Sino Agreement, which guaranteed fundamental freedoms and human rights to the people of Hong Kong. We're also here to protest the Genocide Olympics, which will begin next week. And I believe that the Olympics now have been tarnished, trashed, and torn. These are Xi Jinping's Genocide Olympics, held in a nation that places its own people in concentration camps, forcing ethnic Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and Kyrgyz to go into labor camps. The definition of genocide is being met in every single category by Xi Jinping's monstrous imposition of persecution on the people in Xinjiang. Every single one, including forced abortion, the concentration camps, and of course trying to get people or to put them and their children, separate the children from their families and indoctrinate them in a way that Xi Jinping wants them to be, away from their ethnicity and away from their hallowed belief and their Muslim ideals. Fortunately, Congress has passed the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. I was the principal Republican co-sponsor of that bill, and that will make a difference if it's effectively implemented by the Biden administration. Now the burden of proof shifts to those importing goods from China, from the sneakers to solar panels, to prove that they were not made in Gulag labor. But we must also call out today, and we are, those who profit from the genocide games that will be held in Beijing. We call out sponsors like Coca-Cola, which virtue signals when it comes to protesting common sense laws designed to curb voter fraud in Georgia, but then turns a blind eye to the harvesting of organs of Uyghurs and Falun Gong practitioners. We also call out NBC, which will broadcast the genocide games but refuses to say whether it will cover those athletes who raise their voices to protest the vile human rights abuses of Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party. We call out the IOC. You know, back in 2018, Marco Rubio and I sent a letter to the IOC and said, please move the games. They're committing genocide. And Xi Jinping, like no other, is committing human rights abuses across the board. I was in China in the early 1990s when Wei Jingsheng was allowed out of prison because they thought by letting this tremendous human rights defender out, they would get Olympics 2000. They didn't get it. They rearrested him and then tortured him almost to death. And Wei, of course, is a great hero today and is speaking out over and over about this Olympics. In 2008, Frank Wolf and I went to China and we protested the fact that the dissidents were being rounded out before that Olympics, rounded up by the Chinese secret police and interrogated so that they would have no contact whatsoever with journalists and with athletes. And we said to the IOC, they will do it again, and they'll do it again on steroids, because this is a harsh and cruel dictatorship that is crushing its own people and is doing it each and every day. We also call out today the corporate America, so much of it, like billionaire co-owner of the Golden State Warriors, who has said cavalierly, I watched that tape 3 times. I couldn't believe he would say what he said. No one cares. Well, we care. The American people care. And our friends across the planet who believe in human rights do care. So I ask you all today to redouble our efforts. I hope that people will boycott watching the Olympics. I like the Olympics. They should be held somewhere else. And we have argued for that for years. Thank you for being here today. And again, the people who work there and who work in the Chinese Communist Party are doing the most cruelest things to people who just want freedom and democracy. So thank you for your witness today.
All right, thank you, Congressman Smith. I believe that